Hello, this is Deborah Clay, author and podcaster, and this is Castaway Books. Each week I invite an author to tell me about the books that have influenced their life and inspired their writing. This week's guest is Hannah Dolby. Hello, and it's a delight to welcome Hannah Dolby to my island today. Hi, Hannah.
Hello there, lovely to meet you.
And Hannah, you've had an exciting year because last year you had your first book published, which was No Life for a Lady. And this week, as we're recording, in fact, today, on the day of recording, it's publication day, 6th of June, for Murder, How to Murder Like a Lady. How to Solve Murders Like a Lady. I'm sorry. So congratulations.
Thank you so much. It's a joy and a delight to be here. It has been a crazy year. Do you want me to tell you a little bit about my books?
Yes, of course. We'd love to hear about them.
So they are a twin set, you might call it. And the first one is, they're both set in seaside Hastings. In the Victorian era, and they're about a very naive but feisty Victorian lady who becomes a detective. And across the two books, the first book she's becoming a detective, and the second book, which comes out this week, she is a detective. And the main thing about them is that they are funny and lively, and she has all sorts of adventures. I'd say they're quite a joyful read. So yeah, very much enjoyed writing them.
And it must have been a challenge for your protagonist to be a detective, lady detective in the Victorian era. So yeah, then
exactly,
all sorts of comedic scenes and incidents, I should think.
Absolutely, there's loads of, yes. It was a difficult time when you couldn't barely go out without a chaperone. So yes, there's lots of funny opportunities there that I've exploited.
Looking forward to reading. Let's get on to your book choices, and we'll find a bit about how your book choices have inspired your writing as we go along. So book number one.
You'll have to remind me of the order of them. Oh, of course, I know this. I'm thinking of my age now. So when I was about 4 or 5, I grew up, because I had 3 sisters and an older brother. I grew up in a house full of books, and the first books I really remember are Ladybird books. And I think because I was the youngest, I was always trying to keep up with my brothers and sisters in their reading. And I think I just remember the joy of opening these Ladybird books and looking at these glorious pictures. So this was the early 1970s, and there were a lot of amazing Ladybird artists around at that time. And I think probably my favorite of them is Cinderella, because she had such beautiful dresses and such it was such a happy story, I think. And I think when you're a child, you need stories with happy endings to inspire you and think of the future. So I just remember that glow of picking up those books and not knowing what even when I knew what lay within, they were still as exciting to read again.
And you're right, the beautiful pictures in them. And I was really pleased when they brought back the images from the Ladybird books for birthday greetings cards and things, because I found my favourite one, which was about going to a party, and there's a little girl in a yellow dress with her brunette hair in a ponytail and a big yellow ribbon. When I was 4 years old, I had a yellow party dress, almost exactly the same, because in those days, because I'm older than you, we used to have netting underneath our skirts, so they stood out, just like in the 1950s thing. So I was born at the end of the 50s. I was born in 1959, and she looked like me, had the hair and everything. And my mum bought me this book just before my first birthday party, and I thought it was about me, and I thought it was me on the cover. So whenever I see that image anywhere, I have to buy it.
Completely. Oh gosh, yeah, I'll have to look out for that one now. Do you Do you have a copy of it still?
I do, I do. It's really faded now, but at the moment, the one I'm using, I've got one which is for recording people's birthdays in a book, and I've got one
Mm.
that I bought as a birthday card, which I just keep because it's not faded.
Oh, how wonderful. It's lovely. And it just books like that that take you back to that time of kind of wonder and exploration of the world. They're so lovely to have around, aren't they? When
Yes,
you're
absolutely.
new to reading and new to stories, and oh, it's exciting.
Yes, yes. That's great. Oh, so one more thing on that. You were saying about you had opened up your mind to all the things that could happen with the beautiful, with the dresses and things. So how has that inspired your writing, or how has did life live up to that from the images from when you when you were a little girl of what life might be like?
I don't know if I've been to plenty of parties, so where I got to dress up in nice dresses. So I think that's been one aspect of it. But I think just it's great when you're little to have impossible dreams, or to just think big and to think that wonderful things can happen in life. So I suppose for me, I always wanted to have a book published, but never really thought it would happen. And it was quite a fairy tale getting published, because it all happened quite quickly. I came joint second in the Comedy Women in Print Prize, and then very quickly got an agent and a book deal after that. So it did feel a bit like a fairy tale in terms of happy endings, or happy beginnings, hopefully. So yeah, I think that kind of thing where you're encouraged as a child to dream big and not to have too much reality hitting you in the face, because reality can be hard.
That's a wonderful story, real story, and it does sound like a fairy tale. It's fantastic. Congratulations. So you
Thank you.
entered, what was it you entered, this comedic women's thing? What was
So
it?
it's a wonderful competition called the Comedy Women in Print Prize, and it's run by the comedian Helen Lederer.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, I'd been writing quite a miserable story for years, and when I saw this competition, it set something free in me about writing funny stories, and I think that kind of chimed with me. We were just coming out of lockdown as well, so it was lovely for me to be able to write happy stories, and I think that's why I wrote it at great speed as well, because the deadline wasn't far away, and I think that kind of freed me up from any inhibitions or worries about whether I could write. I just wrote.
Fantastic. So let's go on to book number 2.
Thank you. And I think my book number 2 was, sorry,
Mary Stewart.
Mary Stewart, that's right. Lovely. I beg your pardon. So she was a writer that I discovered in my early teenage years, and she was part of a tradition of kind of vaguely gothic, vaguely adventurous heroines dashing off into exotic places, usually castles or haunted halls, to kind of solve mysteries. But quite a lot of heroines in those sort of books were quite silly, and Mary Stuart's heroines are not. They're quite clever, and they're quite adventurous, and they take their future into their own hands. And I think it chimed with me very much when I was a teenager, because I was quite uncertain of myself, and I was quite shy, and I think it just made me realize that women could go to, it's not just so the book I've mentioned is 9 Coaches Waiting, but it's the whole series of Mary Stuart's romantic suspense novels that I love, really. This Rough Magic, The Moon Spinners, and what's lovely about them is they're usually set in beautiful places, including Scotland, and in Cyprus and Austria, and I'm trying to think where else, but basically gorgeous places where you might go for a lovely holiday. And she describes them so beautifully. So her descriptions are beautiful, and also her romance is lovely as well. So, and for me as a teenager, it was something that really chimed.
Yes, yes. So what was teenage like for you? Did you go to the parties or nightclubs or discos, whatever?
I did. I think it was. I think I had a better time than I felt at the time. I think I felt quite shy, and I felt that life was quite difficult. But actually, looking back, I was going to all those teenage parties, and I did have good friends, and life wasn't all bad. There was lots of good things too. But I think teenage years, they are quite hard generally because you're just so self-conscious. I mean, I remember I was talking the other day about I used to stare in the mirror for about 3 hours and just practice raising my eyebrows and having beautiful expressions. And I'm so glad to be yes, and I'm so glad to be at an age where I don't really need to look in the mirror as much anymore. I just am who I am. But when you're a teenager, it's hard. You're sort of almost discovering your face and thinking about what other people think of it. So
And I
yeah,
think
I think
harder now for young people as well because you've got all this AI imaging. I mean, they've always had the magazines would always touch things up, to make them look better anyway. But you've got so much
yeah.
pressure on young people to look beautiful, haven't you? More so, I think, than your era or my era.
Definitely. And I think when you realize as a teenager that you're not automatically fitting in with whatever ideal is out there, I think there is quite a hard process to go through. And so yeah, it was a rocky time, but I feel it reading probably helped an awful lot during that time, and books in which the heroines did adventurous things as well in glamorous locations was wonderful to be reading.
Excellent. And you no doubt use that in your own books where your heroines are in, well, they're very powerful women, aren't they? Strong women, they must be.
Definitely. I mean, she's very naive, my heroine Violet. She doesn't know anything about what happens in the bedroom after marriage, for example. But she's very feisty and determined, and it tends to be that I think we don't really read much about Victorian women's lives, and but I know what you do read is sort of carefully curated and presented. And perhaps you don't really get that much real insight. So I wonder whether Victorian women were more adventurous and perhaps duplicitous because you had to be to get their own way. So I think my book, yeah, kind of, she's not always completely honest, my heroine, but she's still winsome in a funny way.
Excellent. So let's go on to book number 3.
Yes. So I think I was probably just starting at university, and I was reading. I discovered Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. I think I even studied it. I was studying English, and I just remember loving it from the outset, and going back and watching the black and white film with Laurence Olivier, and I think it's partly that it was the first depiction I'd read of someone being shy. I hadn't really read an honest depiction of what it might feel like. It really felt like Daphne du Maurier perhaps knew what it was like to be shy. And I think for that reason it chimed. And just again, it's that wonderful talent that some writers have of a description of place that really draws you into the story, and that whole kind of Mandalay and the atmosphere of that hall, where and the kind of drama of it all, and which is romance in itself. And so yeah, it really felt like a kind of connection to me at a time when I was blossoming. Probably I was quite shy when I went to university, but I made loads of friends, and I started editing, first writing for and then editing the student newspaper, and that was just glorious. I just remember having great fun, and it really brought me out of my shell, and it was a good start to my writing career. So
when you went to do this course at university, did you have aspirations then to be a writer?
vaguely, yes. So creative writing was part of my course, and in fact I had a glorious dissertation. I don't know if it's done at university now, but my dissertation was, my final year dissertation was something like 10 poems and 10 short stories and book reviews and film reviews, which was absolutely wonderful. And yeah, I loved doing that. So yeah, I did love creative writing. I didn't really do it for, I moved quite quickly into PR and didn't do it for another 20 or 30 years. I didn't really write. So it's only more recently that I've got back into it.
So I find fascinating when people's career histories about because when you set out what your aspirations are or your career plan when you're 17, 18, what happens? There's no resemblance. It's a bit like, if you had children, it's a bit like doing a birth plan. You have all the pretty images and you get all your tapes, and no, it doesn't happen like that. And career's the same. It's just like, nope, this is what's going to happen. Life just comes along, takes you down.
And again, it's like reality, isn't it? It's a shame that reality has to hit with the fact that you need to earn an income and you need to have a job and you need to find a profession that works for you. I mean, PR has worked quite well for me because it's given me the chance to write, and I've been lucky enough to work for the National Museum of Scotland in Edinburgh and Buckingham Palace in London, and the Royal Horticultural Society. And all of that brought me just lovely stories to write about. So, you know, even when I'm writing press releases, I've been writing things about, I don't know, King Henry VIII's gardening manual or exhibition of dinosaurs or all sorts of really interesting things. So in a way, I was still writing, but it was just for an end.
You absolutely were writing. I was going to say, when things come along and they're not what you're expecting, it's all very well, you have a plan, but actually they often take you on a much more exciting ride than one you could have planned. And there is that too. And it certainly did for you. But I have to ask you, because it's in your bio on your Amazon author bio, your first job was in the circus. We can't go by without hearing what you did in the circus.
Absolutely. So it's not quite as exciting as it sounds, but I was very excited. I was 17 and it was my first summer holiday from university. I went to university quite young, and I worked in it was Zippo's circus, which was on the meadows in Edinburgh during the summer holidays, and I worked for 6 weeks, and I was I'm afraid I was manning the tent flaps in case there was a fire. So I stood through three shows a day, and I was all ready to evacuate the audience if there'd been a fire, but it never happened. But I did get to see all the tricks.
Fantastic. Well, there's so much material you can use for stories from your experiences. Massive.
Absolutely. I did see all the tricks and how they worked, so I do have ideas if I ever want to set up my own circus.
Excellent. So let's go on to book number 4.
Right. So the next one I think will be A.S. Byatt's Possession. And that is, it comes at a time in my life when I wasn't reading as much. And I think we do go through stages in life where we're not reading it. We shouldn't give ourselves a hard time for it. I think I was in my late 20s and I just started at the National Museum of Scotland, and I was busy, and I was going out partying, and I was sharing a flat with rotating 4 or 5 people. It was a very kind of busy time of life, and I didn't read as much, but I think I remember reading Possession by A.S. Byatt, and it was just a book that, it's kind of like a package of things I love in life. Like it's about books and manuscripts and hidden manuscripts, and it's about the Victorian era. There's a bit of that in there as well, and it's about kind of studying and love of literature. And I think her words and the way she writes are just so beautiful that it really stayed with me.
I have to confess, when I prepare for the show, I look up all of the books that my guest is going to talk about, and I was so excited by that when I ordered it there and then.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah,
Have you not, you haven't
good.
read, you read it?
No.
Oh, I so recommend it. It's so lovely. I think it's just, there's some books, and I find it with Mary Stuart as well, that are a bit like eating cake. You can just sort of inhale all the words and you're just there and you're lost in it. And I think, yeah, for
It
that
looked like
reason,
one of those books, and I had to order a hard copy as well. Well,
brilliant.
as in an actual copy rather than the Kindle.
Yes, it makes a difference. I've got a hard copy here just because
Oh,
it's so much better to read in a real book, I think.
oh, excellent. That's the good thing you see about listening to these Castaway Books shows, is you get lots of really good book recommendations, and my
Yes,
TBR file gets longer and longer.
I can imagine.
So we've got that you weren't reading a lot at this time because you were in your 20s, and life was your 20s or older than that, but life was full. What were you doing then that was occupying your time? Working, but what else were you doing?
Mostly going out with friends, and actually mostly going out with friends. And I think I probably did, looking back, I think I probably did drink far too much. You don't see it at the time because it's part of the culture. But I did have far too many drunken nights, and it worries me about whether I can remember everything that happened in at that period in my life because I was so busy. I mean, I don't think I was quite at the alcoholic stage, but alcohol was quite a big part of a night out, and it's actually quite freeing now that I don't really need it to be part of a night out, I think. But then it was, and it's quite hard at that age, I think, to find, or it was quite hard to find people who didn't. So I think I was enjoying life and I was quite happy, but looking back, I think I could have tempered it a bit.
Where were you living? Were you in London?
No, I'm from, I don't have much of a Scottish accent, but I'm actually from Edinburgh. And so I was living for a while, I worked for Dundee University and then moved back to Edinburgh, and I worked for the National Museum of Scotland for about 12 years, which was fabulous because they've got 5 museums, and they've got museums about that. There was a costume museum and a flight museum and a farming museum and all sorts. So it was my job was fantastic and I really enjoyed it. And in the evenings, I would hang out with flatmates and cook meals, and we'd go to the Edinburgh Festival and it was on and all sorts. So yeah, it was a good time in life.
Are you still in Edinburgh, around there? Are you still in there?
No, so I moved to London about 10 years ago for work, and so still got quite a lot of family and friends up north, but starting to make new friends down here as well.
Well, I used to work close to the Royal Horticultural Society, so I could picture it, which is why I thought you were in London. But did you move to London around that time for that job?
So I moved to London to work for the press office for the Royal Collection, which is part of, it kind of promotes the exhibitions at Windsor Castle and Buckingham Palace. So I moved there about 10 years ago, and that was fabulous. And then it was the Royal Horticultural Society after that. So yeah, in Vincent Square. So yeah, it's been a ride, and it was fun working for the Royal Horticultural Society as well, because it was all about visiting gardens and flowers and plants, and I learned more than I ever.
I worked at the Audit Commission, which was in Vincent Square as well.
Oh, right.
You're probably having such a glamorous sort of lifestyle, you wouldn't know about boring things about audit of local authorities.
It needs to be done. But did you get disturbed by the boys playing? Because there's a boys' school in the middle, isn't there? With a playing field.
Yes, yes, I do know. Yeah, we worked all over the country and from home, but I know exactly where you mean, because we'd wander around there when we were meeting for coffees or for drinks after work and that kind of thing. So
yeah,
very well. And walked by each other around that time.
We probably did, yes. Yeah, it was about 5 years ago.
I know, longer for me, but so shall we go on to your next book?
Yes. So my next book, I think, is my final one, which is, and I feel I have to have them in front of me, so is Stella Gibbons' Cold Comfort Farm. And I'd read it, I'm sure I've read it in the past and not really taken to it and not really got it. And I think that's something about books and poetry as well, is that you can read them at some point in your life and it doesn't strike a chord, and then you read it again, and it really does. So I've been I'm a published novelist now, and life has changed quite a lot in the past year or two, and so I picked up this book and reread it because it's a funny book and I wanted to see what other funny writers are doing, and I just absolutely love it. It's so clever. It's so clever. It's so clever, and I can see it's quite inspiring from a writing point of view, because I can see that she probably just sat down and just wrote it in a great kind of flurry of just joy and fun and having a laugh. I'm not sure, I haven't read her later books and I'd love to. But this was her first and most successful book, I think. And she wrote another 20 or so after that, but this is the one that everybody remembers.
Absolutely. I haven't read the book. I think I've seen a play of it, or a film. There was a film, wasn't there, or something?
There was a television series which starred a very smouldering Rufus Sewell and lots of other quite famous actors. It's on, I think it's BBC iPlayer at the moment. They've just put it back on. But I think it was the 90s or something that it was made. And it is funny, but there's so much going on in it. I'm not sure, it's almost you need to read the book to really understand what's going on, because there's a lot that happens. And it's really funny when you read it. I think it's funnier to read than to see.
Must be a skill to comedic writing. Some humour comes into my novels, but I would not know how to go about writing a book purposely to say it's comedic. But you had the course, you won a place on a course to learn to improve your practice or skill of
I did, yes. Sadly, I haven't been able to complete that, partly because it was an MA in comedy writing at Falmouth University, and I was so grateful to them for giving me that prize. But because I've got a full-time job and I've been writing a book, I just wasn't able to take the time to carry on with it, sadly. But I actually think for me, I'm a better writer if I don't think too much about it, and I just forget rules and just bring out my silly side and just let the words roll. If I try and think about how I should be doing it, or what what format it should take, I do think I get a bit stymied by that. So for me, it's best just to feel playful and almost bring out that person who read all those Ladybird books all those years ago, and just let that childish side of me out and the free part of me, because I think that's what it's the playing. I remember I did a course with a comedian once on comedy writing, and I've forgotten his name, but he was fabulous. And he basically set us a task where we just had to write as many silly names as possible on a piece of paper, just come up with, I don't know, Arbuthnot, Arthur, or just come up with all sorts of, and that kind of thing I think is best for your brain when you're writing comedies, not to put too many rules on yourself.
I think children are the most amazing in that respect, aren't they? I'm a member of a literary festival, and we had an author come along to do a workshop with the children, and he said, call out some things and I'll write them down and I'll tell you a story. I'll draw a picture, because he illustrated stories, and they would come up with absolutely outrageous things, like a giraffe sitting on a pink toilet seat, or I don't know, just a zebra flying a kite, or on a just absolutely crazy things.
Crazy, but brilliant.
And years that would come, and you just, because there was no censorship, there was no overthinking, it was just whatever comes in my head.
Which is brilliant. And why should I don't think we should ever let that go. And I think that there is a danger that school and education kind of doesn't let you just have that bonkers freedom of coming out with whatever connections you make in your brain. And I think so for me, I have to try and connect with that part of myself, and not try and be too literary. I don't think I'll ever be literary, but hopefully I'll be joyful.
Well, I'm really looking forward to reading your book, so congratulations on the publication of your second one. We're out today, How to Solve Murders Like a Lady.
Thank you so much.
What is the next thing you planned? Are you doing some more in the series, or are you doing something completely different next?
At the moment, I am writing a third book just for me, which I'm having a bit of fun with, and it's what you might call a funny gothic.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm taking Jane Eyre and a bit of Cold Comfort Farm, and I'm sort of throwing them together and just seeing what comes out. So I am at that kind of ideas stage at the moment, and trying to shut down any censors and just coming out with the nonsense and see where it ends up. But it's great fun to be in that position.
Does sound fun. We must never forget to have fun as authors. We sometimes take ourselves too seriously in trying to write to please or to publish. You can restrict yourself, can't you, by worrying too much, having that internal edit going on all the time, censorship. So I think
Completely. And I think there's something about writing, there's a slight fear there that if you write comedy, you won't be taken seriously, which is probably true. But actually, writing funny books are just as important for people to read than, all the most serious works you can come across. So
get to some real truths in writing comedy, I should think.
yes, definitely. You can portray the dark by casting light on it with a bit of humor.
And we all need some humor in these darker times.
Completely. And I think we need to give ourselves permission to laugh a bit. I don't know whether it's because we've been through quite a tough time, but I feel like we are censoring our laughter a bit. And I think we could all do with just saying it's okay to laugh in hard times.
I think we need to laugh today to keep the doctor away. It's very healing.
Exactly.
Now, before I let you go, you can see my beautiful island behind me. So before I cast you aside to there, what are you taking from the ship with you to sustain you on this island, your luxury item?
Well, actually, this is going to be quite difficult because I'm not sure there'll be a plug to plug it in, but I've just discovered slow cookers, and I think they've
me too.
I think they've become very cheap. I think it's quite cheap to buy a slow cooker at the minute because everybody's really excited by air fryers, and I haven't got one. So I've discovered slow cookers, and I just love the fact of throwing ingredients in, at lunchtime, and then it's ready for dinner, and it does taste better.
I know, Hannah. I just discovered it myself because about 18 months ago we had a new kitchen, and I bought one for the first time then because we didn't have a kitchen. And I adore them because what I love most of all is the smell of it all afternoon, or you're doing something, you can smell the food cooking, and then it's like magically there, isn't it?
It's amazing. I love it. It's like a little miracle.
It is. It is. I'm with you on that. And you can get the fish out of the sea and get some vegetables from the island, pick some things up, some fresh mangoes, throw them all in the slow cooker. And then when you've finished writing your novel,
absolutely,
it'll be waiting for you to eat.
Exactly. Dinner's ready.
Excellent. Thank you, and congratulations again on the publication of your book, and we'll be looking forward to reading the next ones that you publish.
It's so lovely to speak to you. Thank you so much.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.